When investigators quietly entered Queen Camilla's private mansion, they weren't expecting anything out of the ordinary.
It started as a routine visit, quiet, almost unnoticeable. But the moment officials forced open the doors of Camilla's private garage, everything changed. Hidden beneath layers of dust and carefully stacked boxes was something the palace never intended the world to see. What they found wasn't just shocking. It was dangerous. A discovery so bizarre, so tightly concealed, that insiders were immediately ordered to keep silent. And while Camilla remained tight-lipped, those who caught a glimpse couldn't believe their eyes. So, what exactly did they see? How long had this been hidden in plain sight? Ray Mill House, exposed, the hidden, chest, and the Diana, revelation. Hidden behind the thick hedges and heavy iron gates of Ray Mill House in Wiltshire lies a secret the royal family never wanted to be uncovered. On the surface, it's just another countryside estate, quaint, peaceful, and a world away from the grandeur of Buckingham Palace or the formality of Clarence House. But to Queen Camilla, this house, tucked away in the sleepy village of Lecoq, has always been more than bricks and ivy. Purchased in 1995 after her divorce from Andrew Parker Bowles, Ray Mill wasn't just a retreat, it was her sanctuary. A place where palace rules didn't apply and where prying eyes couldn't follow. What made Ray Mill different was its independence. It wasn't owned by the crown. That meant no royal audits, no official records, and no mandatory access. Camilla kept it that way even after marrying Prince Charles. No royal staff wandered its halls. No protocol was enforced at the gates. It was hers, and hers alone, her world, sealed off from the one she had married into. But in early 2025, something changed. Quietly, with no press or flashing cameras, a legal bulletin appeared. It mentioned an approved property entry somewhere in Wiltshire. Nothing more. No names, no drama. Yet those familiar with the coordinates quickly realized it pointed directly to the gates of Ray Mill House. Whispers began. Why would Queen Camilla's private home suddenly become the subject of official attention? Insiders hinted at an anonymous tip, one that made its way into the hands of a senior parliamentary officer. It spoke vaguely but urgently of documents, some with royal significance, that had been unlawfully removed and hidden. The location? A property tied to the monarchy, though not formally part of its holdings. That was enough to greenlight a search, and on a cold, gray morning, officials stepped quietly onto the grounds of Ray Mill. Camilla wasn't home. Whether by coincidence or quiet design, she was away on royal duties. The search team had only 4 hours, no more. Their instructions were clear. Check the basement level and any garage or storage areas for items of historical importance. What they found, however, was far beyond anyone's expectations. Behind the house's large garage doors, tall enough to house multiple vehicles, with an old stone facade and thick oak beams, the investigators expected old boxes, gardening tools, and maybe forgotten furniture. Instead, something felt off. Toward the back of the garage, half hidden behind tarps and old crates, was a small wooden door that didn't match the rest of the structure. It wasn't on the original floor plans, and to most eyes, it would have been dismissed as just part of the garage's rustic charm. But when they opened it, the air shifted. Behind it lay a narrow corridor, dimly lit and lined with cobwebs. At the end sat a room, sealed, silent, and untouched. No windows, just one flickering light overhead. And in the middle of the floor, resting alone in the shadows, was a heavy wooden chest. Its hinges were rusted. The wood was worn with time. It hadn't been moved in decades. Inside, investigators found stacks of aged letters, carefully bound in ribbon, and leather-bound journals wrapped in an old silk scarf. They opened one, just one, and everything changed. The handwriting was unmistakable. The words are chilling. The signature at the bottom? Diana. So where did Diana's letters really come from, and why were they hidden in Camilla's garage? Stay glued to find out. The hidden chest in Queen Camilla's garage. What unfolded behind the heavy oak doors of Queen Camilla's garage at Ray Mill House wasn't loud or dramatic. but it was nothing short of extraordinary. Ray Mill, the quiet countryside estate tucked away in the peaceful village of Lecoq, Wiltshire, had always been her private escape. But in May 2025, that quiet was shattered. The garage itself was nothing like the dusty storerooms found in old palaces. It was vast, with concrete floors, steel rafters, and the scent of motor oil and aged timber lingering in the air. Queen Camilla reportedly used it for storage. Gardening tools, old furniture, even classic cars. Yet, as investigators moved carefully through the space during a court-approved search, something strange happened. Near the far wall, one of them noticed a faint draft seeping through the wood paneling. What they found next wasn't on any floor plan. A camouflaged panel gave way to a hidden corridor, narrow, silent, and shrouded in the smell of damp wood and age. The passage, barely wide enough to walk through, snaked behind the garage wall until it opened into a low-ceilinged stone chamber. The room wasn't large, but it felt heavy, almost sacred, and in its center sat a chest, wooden, cracked, and sealed with a rusted iron clasp. It wasn't buried or barricaded, but it had clearly been placed with care. Someone had wanted it hidden, out of sight but not entirely unreachable. When they opened the lid, the mood changed instantly. The air was thick, not with dust, but with the overwhelming sense that they had crossed into something deeply personal. Inside the chest were faded silk wraps, brittle ribbons, and bundles of paper preserved like delicate artifacts. Letters, journals, handwritten notes, each piece tinged with the passage of time. Among them, a red-marked envelope stood out. "Not to be opened without permission," it read. No name, no date, no signature. Despite the warning, the envelope was opened. The handwriting inside was unmistakable, graceful and fluid, with the kind of emotional weight that only one woman could carry. "It's her," one investigator reportedly whispered. "Diana." The pages didn't need names. The feelings they carried made them clear enough. One journal entry read, "There are days when I don't recognize myself. The words he says about me echo louder than the words he says to me. And she is always close, always listening, always watching. I've tried to forgive, but how can I forgive someone who acts like I never existed?" Another entry, dated just weeks before her final trip to France in 1997, revealed even more. "I've come to understand I'm not meant to win this. Some battles aren't meant to be fought in daylight. I don't want the boys to hate her. I want them to understand. But understanding doesn't make it easier." It was heartbreak in ink. Not accusation, not hysteria, but sorrow, calm, and resignation. The "she" was never named, but there was no mistaking who Diana had in mind. Camilla. One final line, scrawled on the back of a leather-bound journal, sent chills through everyone in the room. "If anything happens to me, make sure someone finds this. Not for revenge, for truth." Within hours, the contents of the chest were placed under royal protection. Phones rang across London. The palace was informed. Ray Mill House, once Camilla's quiet escape, was now at the center of a revelation that could shake the monarchy to its core. And how did Camilla's quiet escape become the epicenter of a royal shockwave? Stay tuned. This changes everything. Diana's hidden voice, found in Camilla's private estate. By sunrise, everything outside Ray Mill House looked the same. Still, calm, untouched. The tall gates remained locked, the gravel driveway undisturbed. But inside, the air had changed. The investigators were gone. The chest removed under tight security and the doors closed once more. Yet the stillness that returned was only on the surface. Within the halls of royal power, something had been unleashed. Something impossible to contain. The documents taken from Queen Camilla's garage were no longer a quiet curiosity. Now in official custody, they had become the center of a rapidly unfolding internal storm. Handwriting analysts, legal teams, and royal archivists were brought in immediately. Page after page, they confirmed what many already suspected. The writing belonged to Princess Diana. The familiar curve of her pen, the unmistakable voice, vulnerable, sharp, and unfiltered, had returned after more than 20 years of silence. Camilla's garage, spacious and cluttered with garden tools, boxes of old furniture, and covered vehicles, had looked ordinary enough, but tucked away behind a seemingly insignificant stack of crates sealed inside a hidden wooden chest were Diana's personal writings, letters, diaries, fragments of thought wrapped in silk and tied with faded ribbon. The presence of these private reflections in that garage, Camilla's garage, was more than unexpected. It was explosive. And the contents? They weren't just painful, they were familiar. For years, the public had speculated about Diana's inner battles, her loneliness, her fading sense of power, her attempt to reclaim her identity. But now, here were her words, not paraphrased, not interpreted. "Heron, I see what's no longer mine," one line read, "and I wonder when it stopped being a betrayal and started being accepted." She never named Camilla, but she didn't need to. Every reference was unmistakable, lowercase, distant, yet constant. In another entry, Diana wrote, "I dream of peace, not grandeur. I don't want palaces or diamonds. I want to feel like I matter again. But I see the invitations go out. I see the smiles exchanged. I know where I stand now. I am the inconvenient memory." That final line reportedly caused an uncomfortable silence in the review room. The inconvenient memory. A woman once adored and admired, now voicing her deepest fear, being quietly erased from history and remembered not for who she was, but only when convenient. What puzzled the team most wasn't the content, it was the location. These writings were never catalogued, never listed in Diana's official estate. According to the palace, her belongings were either returned to her family or sealed away by royal order. These pages weren't supposed to exist, yet here they were, inside the private home of the woman Diana had spent years living in the shadow of. Speculation erupted almost instantly. Had they been taken long ago during the clearance of a royal storage room? Or had someone deliberately hidden them, far from official eyes? Some suggested they were never meant to be found. Others believed Diana had left them for someone to discover, eventually. Palace insiders say Camilla was notified soon after the investigators left. Her reaction was reported as first disbelief, then anger. She allegedly accused palace aides of plotting against her. But what worried those around her wasn't what she said. It was what she didn't. No one could explain how the documents ended up there. No denial, no clarification. And as word spread, a silent ripple of fear began to move through royal offices. If these letters had survived, what else had? Had Diana prepared for this? Had she hidden more? Because the woman who once felt invisible had spoken again. And this time, the silence that followed felt like a warning. So, how did a forgotten voice suddenly shake the monarchy to its core? Stay with us. This is just the beginning. The discovery that shook the monarchy. By the time whispers of the discovery at Ray Mill House reached the public, palace officials were already scrambling. There was no press release, no carefully worded statement, just silence. But silence couldn't stop what was coming. A blurry photo had surfaced online. Though grainy, it was enough. The edge of a royal crest, looping cursive unmistakably signed Diana. That single image set the media on fire. The photo was traced back to the search inside Queen Camilla's sprawling countryside estate in Lecoq, Wiltshire. Specifically, her garage, a large, well-built structure on the edge of the property, originally designed to store classic cars and gardening tools. But investigators had found more than old tires and paint cans. Behind stacked crates and rusted shelving, they'd uncovered a narrow passage concealed within the garage wall. At the end of it sat a heavy wooden chest, sealed shut, forgotten or maybe purposefully hidden. Inside were more than diaries. These weren't just Diana's personal thoughts. They were her fears, her suspicions, her unanswered questions. Dozens of sealed letters sat beside the journals, some dated, some addressed, though names had been redacted in official summaries. Still, the tone was clear. Diana had felt the walls closing in around her, and she'd written about it. One letter, dated just 6 months before her death in August 1997, sent a jolt through every office that read it. "If I disappear, I need someone to understand the truth, not the headlines, not the staged appearances, the real story." It wasn't a smoking gun, but it came uncomfortably close. What made the situation explosive wasn't just the content, it was the location. These writings had been found not in some forgotten archive or museum vault, but in Queen Camilla's private home. The same Camilla whom Diana had once described in a note as the steady presence that made me feel like a stranger in my own life. According to sources inside the palace, Camilla had been caught completely off guard, but her reaction quickly turned from confusion to rage. When informed that the chest had been seized and its contents were under review, she reportedly shouted at an aide, "This is absurd! This is harassment, dressed up as protocol!" Her words echoed through the halls of the estate. A few days later, Queen Camilla was quietly summoned to a private session at a magistrate's court in Wiltshire. Officials were quick to clarify she wasn't being treated as a suspect, but simply as the legal owner of the property where the materials were found. But the damage had already been done. Footage from inside the court leaked within hours. Camilla appeared tense, walking quickly beside her lawyer and a police officer. She wasn't arrested, but the optics told a different story. To many watching, this wasn't a queen consort tending to legal formalities. It looked like someone facing consequences. News outlets across the globe ran the story with feverish urgency. What was Diana trying to say? And secrets buried in Camilla's garage dominated headlines. That same night, Tucker Carlson cut into his regular programming with a special segment. Here's what investigators found in Queen Camilla's mansion. And it's not good. His message was sharp and sobering. This isn't about misplaced letters. It's about why they were hidden in the one place no one ever thought to look. Inside the courtroom, Camilla stayed silent. Her lawyers claimed the materials were archived by mistake during the old estate transitions. But outside, few were buying it. Analysts warned that even without a verdict, the court of public opinion had already spoken. Because the voice that had been silenced for over 2 decades had returned, and it hadn't come from a statue or a documentary. It had emerged from the garage of the very woman many believed had taken everything from her. And what if Diana's true voice emerged not from history books, but from Camilla's garage? Keep watching to uncover more. A royal reckoning begins. Inside the palace walls, a quiet unease quickly spiraled into something far more serious. What began as a low-profile legal visit to Ray Mill House had ignited an international storm. The queen consort, Camilla, found herself at the center of a scandal, one that was no longer about whispers or speculation. Her name, once tied to charity appearances and royal engagements, now dominated global headlines for an entirely different reason. The chest of handwritten letters investigators discovered hidden beneath the floorboards of her private garage. The public reaction was swift and brutal. This wasn't seen as a simple case of misplaced documents. It felt like betrayal. The idea that Princess Diana's most personal thoughts, captured during the darkest chapters of her life, had been locked away on Camilla's property was too much for many to accept. Across social media and news platforms, the court of public opinion was in session, and the verdict was harsh. Following her appearance in court, Camilla didn't return to Ray Mill House. Insiders say she was taken to a private royal residence, accompanied by a minimal security team and just one close advisor. Notably missing was King Charles III. He remained at Highgrove, visibly shaken by the events unfolding around him. According to multiple reports, he demanded answers behind closed doors, chiefly how such deeply sensitive materials had ended up in Camilla's possession in the first place. The palace itself went into lockdown mode. No statements, no explanations. But silence at the press office didn't mean silence inside the family. Sources close to the royals said the mood was strained, especially with Prince William now first in line to the throne. The discovery wasn't just political or historical. These letters were his mother's voice, her grief, her truth, and finding them buried, rather than shared with her children, struck a blow that protocol couldn't fix. Thousands of miles away, Prince Harry issued a brief but cutting statement through his team in California. "We believe the memory of our mother deserves transparency, not concealment. Some things should never be hidden from family." There was no mention of Camilla, but his meaning was unmistakable. The words echoed Diana's own, sharp, direct, and impossible to ignore. And what if Diana's voice was never truly gone, but deliberately hidden, all along? Stay connected. The truth unfolds now. The garage, the chest, and the voice that wouldn't stay silent. The storm didn't stay behind palace walls. It spilled out into streets, across borders, and into homes where Princess Diana's name still carried a kind of sacred weight. Inside Mill House, Queen Camilla's private Wiltshire estate, a discovery had been made. A chest, sealed and hidden deep within her garage, beneath a stack of forgotten belongings. But it wasn't what the chest looked like that stunned the world. It was what it held. Diana's voice, raw and unfiltered, waiting in silence for nearly 3 decades. The Spencers, Diana's birth family, were furious. Sources close to them said they had no idea these journals even existed, and worse, no say in how or when they were uncovered. They weren't only angry about the secrecy. They were hurt that such deeply personal writings had ended up in the very place so closely tied to Diana's emotional collapse. They began consulting legal experts almost immediately, hoping to take back control of what they believed should have been preserved by her estate, not hidden away behind someone else's garage wall. Across British media, legal and ethical questions exploded. How did these documents go missing in the first place? Were they stolen, archived, and forgotten, or deliberately concealed? Some insiders believed the writings may have quietly vanished in the chaotic years following Diana's death in 1997, perhaps during the reshuffling of belongings between Kensington Palace and various royal estates. Others pointed to the vast royal archives, where thousands of items had been boxed, moved, or misplaced by staff who didn't know what they were handling. But to the public, those theories felt weak. These weren't dry official records. They were intimate letters, heavy with grief, fear, and reflection, and they had surfaced in the one place no one expected: Camilla's home. Inside Buckingham Palace, the reaction was divided. Senior advisors were torn. Some pushed for Queen Camilla to speak directly to the public, to offer clarity, or at least a sign of accountability. Others warned that a single misstep could unlock even more questions, ones the monarchy might not be able to answer. And so, the palace chose its oldest response: silence. But outside, silence said everything. Crowds gathered near the gates. They carried flowers, not for the queen consort, but for the woman many still called the People's Princess. Some held signs. Others simply stood in quiet disbelief. One question echoed louder than the rest: how did Diana's most private words end up locked away in the home of the woman who replaced her? The palace gave no answer, but the country didn't need one. In the court of public opinion, the damage was done. Diana had returned, not as a memory on a statue, not as a face in an old documentary, but as a woman speaking again, in her own hand, from beyond the silence. Camilla withdrew from the public eye without explanation. Her name remained the most searched term in the UK for days. Polls showed confidence in the monarchy dipping sharply, especially among younger generations who had grown up hearing only the sanitized version of Diana's story. And now, for the first time, they were hearing her actual story, in her own trembling but defiant words. Behind palace walls, urgency set in. This wasn't just another tabloid crisis. This was a legacy unraveling. King Charles, usually steady, was described as deeply shaken. He canceled appearances, declined calls, and reportedly requested that updates be delivered to him in writing only. Those close to him said he looked tired, older, worn not just by the scandal but by the realization that the past wasn't finished with them. The letters were not made public in full. Only fragments reached the media. But even those were enough. Diana's voice, long buried, had become louder than ever. And one entry in particular stayed with everyone who read it. Just a line, written in her unmistakable hand. "If they ever find this, I hope it makes someone pause." It did. It forced the world to stop and listen. But what do you think might still be hidden behind palace walls, waiting like Diana's voice to be heard? We'd like to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to comment and subscribe.